What are you using?
What? Stay breathing there, champ.
Let's remember where we are. Our community has endured a crisis and so many of us chose to respond. We keep our community safe, we keep our loved ones alive, and in sharing our compassion and wisdom, we become world changers, each of us here.
It's so sad. We can't handle any more people dying down here. The peers that are on the front lines, they are saving lives every day, all day, every day, and it's hard on them.
I overdosed myself. I was lucky I was with a roommate too, or I wouldn't be here right now.
We're making the best of what we've got in the middle of a crisis situation where people are dying and we're losing our friends.
All right, guys, if you're done your smash, time to dash. Move over to the chill, half an hour limit, shoot within it.
Hi. How are you, Colin?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to meet you.
You as well.
How's it going?
It's good. Yeah.
Let's see, we're in January. You did a number of festivals with Love in the Time of Fentanyl. Maybe one of the more recent ones was Doc NYC in November.
Yeah.
Right. It's getting ready. It's going to have a broadcast. But we're going to focus on the fact that your documentary is having its theatrical premiere.
Okay.
In New York City, starting I think this coming Friday, at the Firehouse Cinema at DCTV.
Yeah.
Which I still have not made it over to yet. I'm living a little north of the city these days. I'm dying to get over there.
It's an amazing cinema. Old Firehouse.
Oh, yeah.
Probably one of the oldest in Manhattan, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I've been there many, 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 many times. I was in an earlier versions of the cinema before it became an official cinema. I was even at the what do they call the ground breaking ceremony. Yeah. And so because I've just had a long relationship with that DCTV, so I'm just really anxious to get over there. And I will say to those who are not aware maybe that this cinema exists, this documentary cinema, go see Love in the Time of Fentanyl and make it your first film to see there. It's supposed to be a great cinema. So, and you'll be there, I assume?
Yeah, we're doing Q&As on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, really? Wow, that's great. So you're really going to be busy there. Well, this is a subject which, deserves the conversations, and because everybody's lives have been touched somehow by, people that are suffering from addiction. This is obviously a play on the novel, the title I'm talking about, Love in the Time of Cholera. This is Love in the Time of Fentanyl. Another, I guess you could call it epidemic. I mean, was this avoidable, do you think? Or do you think like cities like Vancouver, where your film takes place, is, one of many cities probably affected by this problem?
I think it's absolutely avoidable. It's a very complicated issue. So it's depends on where you're looking at it. But from like a policy perspective and a prohibition perspective, I think an example would be Switzerland, who has gone with evidence-based harm reduction services for many years, which includes offering subscription or prescription opioids, and it's called opioid assisted therapy, where they provide free heroin to people suffering from chronic addiction. And what they have found is many benefits from these programs, including people not having to do crime or at-risk behaviors, to obtain their drugs. And when they're not having to do the hustling to look for them, they've been able to balance their lives out, get, educations, family back, relationships, and work at jobs, obviously. And people think when they hear, about services like this, that's crazy and that's enabling, and people are going to come from everywhere to start trying heroin and stuff, when that's absolutely not the case. The addiction amounts haven't increased because of these programs or anything like that. But more importantly, fentanyl doesn't have a market to enter there, because the black market's very small, because most people that are suffering from chronic addiction are able to get, free heroin. So I think that's a real example of, how the war on drugs and criminalizing and this useless battle that's been going on for forever, has just made things worse and worse and worse. And we're at a point now where drugs become so toxic and deadly, and the easier they are to smuggle, and the smaller things like fentanyl appear. And so I definitely think it's avoidable if we
it was a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems well, I mean, America is always very reactive and just doesn't really get it. And it's more punitive, more about punishing than it is about preventing. But this is in Canada, for Pete's sake, everybody. It's a socialized medicine, all this. But and so we're clear. Your film, by the way, is kind of through the prism of on a personal level, because you actually get into, we watch specific individuals who are work at this the OPS, which is the Overdose Prevention Society, in this area of Vancouver's downtown east side, right? And we get to know these people pretty intimately, and they are themselves either former or current addicts, right? And that work there. But the idea behind it is not to get people necessarily off it, to get them unaddicted. It's really just to deal with it, creating a safe environment for them, because we know that freeing yourself from addiction is a long process, and it's this is sort of like a way of managing that period, right?
Yeah, so these sites are basically just focused on saving lives and building relationships. They're not. It's a common misconception that people in harm reduction or providing these services are opposed to treatment, and that's definitely not the case. I've worked in these sites, and I've probably seen more referrals to detox and treatment that happen in these sites than anywhere else. I've worked in abstinence-based treatment and lots of different kind of areas of this issue. But yeah, these sites are there to save lives, and they've been around for a long time in numerous different countries, over 30 years, and there's never been an overdose death in any of these sites.
That's a shocking detail, by the way. I was like, I can't. That was amazing to me.
Yeah, so I think what they said that says is it's people. We want to focus on addiction and fentanyl and all these things, but the reality is it's stigma and the way that we kind of exclude people from services that is killing people. And when people are using alone, these sites are able to save lives because really people just need oxygen. In some cases with fentanyl now, it's naloxone is used quite a bit.
Okay.
But really, if someone's there from the onset of an overdose, it's very manageable, and people don't have to die. And yeah, I mean, like to get to the root of this crisis is a long process, I think, and we have to look at lots of different things and how we operate. But bottom line, that these sites are just there to save lives and keep people alive, and build these relationships that these people that use these sites really aren't welcome anywhere in society. That especially in the U.S., where people have to hide because they're scared to be thrown in jail. No one really wants injection drug users around, so they're constantly trying to hide and use in really unsafe conditions. But also, like, when people feel welcome and feel safe and not judged, the level of trust that's built in these sites really leads to a lot of different options for people. And sometimes that means detox, sometimes that means housing, Sometimes that means like healthcare and meeting a nurse and accessing all these different services that people haven't been able to access.
Is it, I mean, I in my word just salad, or before I mentioned that, I'm used to America having the wrong priorities almost in every single case. It's just, even though we're number one, apparently. But I kind of joked that Canada, on the other hand, full of, the typical cliche nice people, but is this idea of almost like not contributing to getting people off the drug as a priority, is that a bridge too far for most Canadians? Like maybe like that they just don't see this as should be included in socialized medicine.
Yeah, that like I think people in the US assume that, oh, it's Canada and progressive country, they just welcome these kinds of ideas. But the first injection site in North America was in Vancouver's downtown east side, and it was extremely controversial. The government of Canada actually tried to shut it down, the conservative government at the time, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. But there's tons of evidence on these sites. So at the Supreme Court, the Insight, the name of the site there, said, okay, we're reducing drug use on the streets, we're reducing syringe litter on the streets, we're saving lives, we're referring people to treatment and detox. And the government was like, well, we just don't like it. So I think that's the big issue for people, is that they hear about this and it triggers, and they're morally opposed, and they're not comfortable with it. But the evidence shows that there's really no negative side to this, really.
Right. I mean, and people just go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Colin.
Well, it's just, like Canada, and like we are having these conversations now in the US. It took a long time for people to wrap their heads around it, and it was extremely controversial. But it takes time for people to start to see how it works, and it really paid off. On top of everything else, it's saving taxpayers money. So like all those overdoses that were happening on the streets, you have ambulances, you have police, you have emergency services. The first two sites in the US opened up here in New York, and in the first year alone, they estimated over $20 million was saved in emergency services costs. So
well, there you go. Now you're talking American English.
Yeah, exactly. So if people are like, wow, that's, we don't care about the human aspect of it, there's the cost savings alone is like mind-boggling, right?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think
Please.
that issue, that one of the main things with this issue, and that's what I hope to do with the film, is just like people need to get educated, people need to be aware, there's a lot of deeply entrenched beliefs about people who use drugs and about this issue. And I kind of wanted to push people past their comfort zones and show, not only how these sites work, but the amazing humans that just because they use drugs, they're also saving lives, and they also have value. And our comfort level as a society is what's holding these services back, and what's holding life-saving services back, really. So I think the more that we can get educated, more people become aware, okay, this is actually what this is. It's not, what we have in our heads. The more I think like governments can support it, because they know they have the votes.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting for somebody like me, the shocking part of your film, which again is, by the way, called Love in the Time of Fentanyl, which is opening theatrically in New York City at the Firehouse Cinema this Friday, which is the 3rd of February, excuse me. It wasn't watching somebody who is like actually one of the people running the clinic or the center shooting up or what have you. It's actually how humanized these people are, and that they're heroes. I mean, too, you can't put people into, no matter how extreme their conditions and situation is, you can't put people, just simplify them and that these people are very, they are in themselves like first responders. They're racing to, on the streets to get to somebody who is passed out in order to save lives. They get there before the ambulances in a lot of cases and start the process of reviving them, correct? As you said, with oxygen. And there's probably not a lot they can do legally, probably, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it can never be illegal to try to save somebody's life, can it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not illegal. And I think the thing is, naloxone is becoming, more and more accessible in the States, but for a long time, that was really hard to get a hold of, but it's been around. Just like in Canada, it's like I said, these sites have been open for a while, or the first one was. It took a while for these, because of the crisis, basically, is when these services became spread out across the country. But that was my main, reason for wanting to make this film, is like you said, that I was watching the media at the time that was covering the issue, and the downtown east side is really, known globally as kind of ground zero of this crisis, because it's a community with a large percentage or a high concentration of injection drug users. And so it's where fentanyl kind of hit first and really took over the drug supply first. And so people were dying really, really rapidly we were hearing almost like getting calls weekly of people we've known and loved from that neighborhood. But at the media at the time was covering kind of how hard this was on the paramedics. And, not to take anything away from the paramedics, they've been doing amazing, but no one was focusing on the community themselves, that were the ones that were saying enough's enough. We're going to teach ourselves how to use naloxone and set up these kind of tents where people can come and use in front of us so we can save lives. And, at the time, the government, no one really knew what to do. This was hitting so hard and so fast. And it was the community themselves that really kind of led the way in the response to the crisis there. And that wasn't being shed a light on. And that's really kind of why I was like, I really want to capture this, because many of the people in the film are my friends. I'd worked in the community for many years and knew how hard it was on them.
How's let's see, I wrote, Dana. Dana is one of the guys that runs the clinic, or
he's a
counselor,
supervisor there,
and he himself is a user, right?
Yep.
Which, again, you this could be anybody. You could be your pal, your cousin, your father. I mean, that's why your film is so important, because everybody, no matter how foreign this issue seems to people, when you watch a film like Love in the Time of Fentanyl, you can relate to the people, and also Ronnie, he's the guy that had to take some time, right? He's burnt out. So the toll isn't probably only physical in terms of the amount of hours and the amount of running around and work and the intense nature of it. It's is also, there's obviously an emotional emotional burnout that happens. And so I really got to like these folks, and Sarah, who founded this center. Yep. And I love the idea, the focus being on community, because you can't really emphasize enough that community is so crucial to people's survival.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what it really is about for me.
Yeah. And you see it certainly in your documentary. Now, the big question on everybody's mind is, how did you get Sean Baker as your executive producer? How did that come about?
Yeah, so
great filmmaker Sean Baker.
Yeah, I've worked in the community for many years and was friends with a lot of the folks in the film, and had been a longtime friend of Sarah, who's the founder of the site. And I was kind of back and forth there shooting, and one day Sarah called me and said, "Hey, Sean Baker's here and wants to meet you." And I remember I was like changing a tire and was like way out of town, or not way out of town, but like fairly far.
Not close to this, not close to.
Yeah, and I was like, he's, and she was like, "Are you around?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And so I was just like luring it to the site. But yeah, he was doing kind of research about a film he wanted to do. It's pretty personal for Sean as well, the subject, and has been, I think, working on a while. Hasn't been filmed yet, but I think he's still planning on it. And so he was volunteering, at Ops, I think every week there when I was there, and so that's how I met him. And then after I had kind of a rough cut, I sent it to him, and he's been very supportive ever since, and really, just lucked out, I guess. Right place, right time.
That's great. And I hope you get a lot more, people on board. I think people will see it. they'll become the more people that see it, the more ambassadors you'll have out there for the documentary, no doubt. And if you haven't been down to DCTV in Lower Manhattan, I do want to recommend people go check out your documentary there. It's to see it in a cinema, and you'll be there again throughout the weekend doing Q&As. I guess people go to the DCTVNY.org to get the details of those screenings and the times, or when you're not there too, if they just can't make it. And what are the guys in the film? How did they feel like they came out and the film came out?
Yeah, great. It's been amazing to hear about all the screenings and festivals in Canada. Sadly, drugs are criminalized, so it's a tough time getting them to the US for a lot of people that were in the film. But we've been able to get them to a lot of the kind of festivals and the different screenings in Canada, and they've been getting standing ovations, and it's something I think we're all really proud of from that community, and it's been an honor to introduce them to the world.
This could be a very healing process, because not only do people respond positively to the film when they see it, but also, they're sending love to these guys, right? And it's just kind of must feel very, very cathartic for them. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just feeling acknowledged. A lot of this work, like I talked about, is controversial, and not many people understand what is happening and how not only hard it is, but just also the beauty. Like, the film isn't just a dark film. I really wanted to capture the laughter and the humor and the humanity of the magic that happens in these sites. And so I think people are just proud that all these things that are normally not portrayed in the media, there's little slivers of it in this film, and capturing what it's really like.
Well, I appreciate your making the time coming on here, and I wish you much success with it. Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Well, thanks so much for having me on and supporting the film. Yeah, it means a lot.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. Yeah, again, it's called Love in the Time of Fentanyl. It's directed by Colin Askey.
Yep.
Did I get that right? And go see this film. Go see it. I'm recommending it. Go see it. Thanks again, and we'll hopefully have another opportunity to do this again sometime.
Amazing. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. All right. You're welcome. Thank you, Colin.
Take care.